that has been lost from going to school. So we're going to talk to some very good, excellent guests about what happens to these children. And the way that I look at it is the day that they shut down the school system was a day of infamy. That was a terrible day. Now, I know that America went into a state of panic over a COVID virus spread across this country and across Baltimore. But it seems to be happening worse. That is, the last year seems to be having a more major effect on the African American community. Now, once again, I'm going to let you know, I am focusing on the effect of the lost years of education on the African American community. So, Black people, I'm basically talking to you. Don't anybody get angry. Everybody's welcome to join in and comment on the subject matter. But be aware that I am talking to the Black people because Black people seem to have been more affected by it. So it's a day of infamy, the day that the schools were shut down a year and a half ago. Closing the schools, literally sending the teachers home, sending the professors home, administrators, sending them home, uneducated American children. We're going to talk to some people this morning. What happens when a child woke up the day after the schools were closed and prepared to go to school? But the mother and the parent says, sorry, baby girl, you can't go to school. The schools are closed. What happens to the parents? Their jobs, their sense of security, their continuous thinking of normal. What happens to that normality? It's gone. So I'm not going to take too much longer in giving you a basic synopsis of the reason for this show. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about this issue. And you're welcome to come in and talk about it. Links have been sent out to various people. Those are on YouTube, those on Facebook. We're sending you links. If you can just tap on, you can even write, send something, whatever. Communicate with me. This is Chief O in Maryland. So let me take the time now to welcome a very special guest, a professor, a highly acclaimed professor at Howard University, Dr. and a good friend, Stanley Onye. Dr. Onye, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You heard my introduction and my all. Please tell the people of Baltimore, give them a small detail, because your seat will take a day to actually talk about. So give them a idea of who you are and where you are a professor at.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Stanley Onye. Let me make one correction. I'm not a professor at Howard University. No, I attended Howard University. I am right now. I am a retired professor from UDC, and I'm running my own education company, SNACO Consulting and Management.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but I was. Before I retired, I was a 27-year-old professor in government and politics and criminal justice. I haven't taught at University of Maryland, University College, and then at University of DC. So currently, I'm running my own consulting company in education.
Awesome.
But this is a good topic, and I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on board and
Thank you.
Talking to people about this closing of schools and its impact,
Mhm.
its effect on not just the children, the students, but the parents. Go ahead, take it over.
All right. Thank you very much. Um, as all of us know, let me start by saying that I really feel very sorry for students of today, the students and their parents, because education somehow has changed, and we don't know whether it has changed for good or whether it has changed for bad. But this topic this morning, specifically on African American kids, those in Baltimore or Maryland specific, most of the students and teachers in Maryland were affected, just as other students and teachers globally. One thing is certain: we are still trying to find out the effect of this pandemic on school closure for well over a year and a half. That information is being tallied, that information is being gathered, because we are still under the COVID protocol. But the parents, the students equally have suffered. The pandemic has created gap from what we have said. There's a gap between students of a year and a half ago and current students. And that gap is what we are going to be watching in the coming days and months. What kind of losses could we expect from the shortened 2019 to 2020 school year? The answer to that is very, very complicated because of the unique circumstances of COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
But let me go on a little bit before, maybe more questions will come up. Most students were homeschooled by looking at the Zoom, looking at the online curriculum that teachers were forced to learn, just like boot camp. Many of them underwent boot camp. The parents were also, subjected to learning at the same time, because when kids are at home, they are listening to the teacher, but the parents had impact on how they concentrate in class. So go ahead. I don't know if you want to say something.
No, I mean, I'm listening very carefully because that's exact the suffering, the effect of not being in school, of not the entire year and a half lost. That is exactly what we would like to hear from those who are involved in the educational system.
Sure.
And from those who are, what we're looking at, Dr. Stan, is empty multi-million-dollar school buildings. And now, not only that, something that is so much part of this educational system, PTA. There are no more PTAs. Is that the parents, the Parents Teachers Association is gone. There's so many things that are involved in the entire school system that disappeared. And again, the impact. I mean, is it overreacted for Black people to organize themselves for their children? Because it seems like it's a threat if that kind of movement is engaged because of the COVID, because of the uncertainty of the COVID. Is it overreaching? Even now, we're expecting the parents who will talk to us about what it's like to wake up in the morning and tell your child, there's no school today. You're finished. There's no school. Go and watch TV. Go ahead, Dr. Anya.
No, one of the good things that happened was that teachers were really subjected to adapt content to their online delivery. Most schools gave computers, laptops to teachers to teach from their own home. So it's not particularly correct to say that students stayed home and watched TV. No, students went to school, but how that school was structured was different from what we know. Usually, the schools, children get up in the morning, get on the bus, get to school, meet their current friends, meet their teachers, eat lunch together, play outside as a group. But that was lost. Clearly, that was lost. So kids wake up in the morning, sit down at home, start staring at a computer. From that computer, they interacted with their teachers. But that had an effect on students, because some students are computer savvy, some students are not. Some students have resources to buy computers, state-of-the-art computers that they can use at ease. Some students are not. And most African American students were disadvantaged because they did not have the resource. Most students did not have the resource to get those gadgets that will make for effective learning.
Exactly. And that is in itself what we witnessed in most urban cities.
Yes.
All of a sudden, the school is closed, and most parents don't even know how to work a computer.
Yes.
Use one, even if it's given to them freely, to teach their children. So, how do we correct this? It just seems to me that parents are now, they are standing in the station, and they can take no action, fearful of stepping above a stationary place.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems that, you have to conform. We understand that you never have to conform. But how do you conform from the beginning if you're living in an urban city where you have no Wi-Fi, no land?
That's true.
The presence of a computer was given months after the schools were shut down.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of, how much damage did it do? And I keep coming back to that because,
mm-hmm.
We want some people down in the urban cities to listen carefully. Some kind of change must come.
Yes, there is a damage. There's no doubt about it, because the way we conceived education in 2019 is different from the way education is going forth, 2020 and 2021 and beyond. I can see there is a substantial damage. There is a prediction somehow that students will be entering into fall 2021 with being behind in so many subjects. They will be behind. There's no question about it.
Right.
Especially in math and science, where they needed on-hand class activity to succeed. But in reading, I can see kids K to 12 doing well in reading, because they will be home, reading from computer, interacting with their parents. And the other side of it is that the parents are the ones that suffer this most, because some of them were forced to start teaching from home, to start helping their kids from home. What teachers used to do, parents took it on, and something had to suffer. What was that thing that suffered? Their ability to go out there and work and make money and take care of the family. That suffered, because if you have kids at home and you don't have good daycare, what is the alternative? As a parent, you are working, you use up your leave. What happens? You then go on unpaid leave. By going on unpaid leave, you cannot afford for your family. You are in food banks. You are looking for food. You are calling for help. You are getting on unemployment. All those things have psychological effect both on the parents and on the kids. So we are going to be seeing a lot of psychological problems in future, especially some kids that are going to be suffering from usually PTSD that we used to attribute due to something else. Now we are going to be watching that on students. So their skills somehow will suffer. The academic skills will suffer. But how long it will take to bring them up to speed is something that nobody can predict at this time. At this time. Most students will also sacrifice their summer because some of them have to then go to school during the summer, especially now that some schools are beginning to have classroom interaction. So we are going to see also interrupted summer. Vacations will be interrupted, and then there will be more strain on the parents as well.
But let me ask you something, Dr. Onye.
Yes.
Social stability impacted.
Yeah.
The summer schools impacted. Did government, in your view, abruptly change social stability too quickly? Hard? Was it very too abrupt? Were people prepared? And if they were not prepared, what is the impact on that?
Remember that, a couple of years ago, nobody predicted this at all. Nobody predicted this. But now, let me take a step back a little bit. We have a structure now. If we have this type of problem in future, how will we counter it? Now we are going to be having lessons learned. Lessons learned in the sense that nobody predicted this pandemic and its effect. Nobody wants to die, really. And initially, people were dying from this COVID thing. And the best way to handle it was to shut down everything. For the first time in my life, that government was even shut down. Everything was shut down. Things that we thought were impossible before was possible. So shutting it down, I would say, was good. I would do that again under the same circumstance. But the question is that did it have intended effect? I would say in some instances, yes, it had intended effect. It did help us to get a handle. Now that we have a handle on this COVID through the vaccine, hopefully the vaccine will do the work. Now that we have that handle, then we can be able to start finding ways to go back to compensate for lost time. So it is how do we correct the lost time? That is what the issue now is. We are going to correct the lost time by making resources available to schools, by making resources available to kids, by making sure that these kids go back to what they used to do in the classroom. So that is just what is happening. Yes, everything was shut down abruptly, but I thought it was the best decision so as to get a handle on this pandemic thing.
Well, this is, let's talk about it. And
yes.
We're talking about it because that's exactly what we need to do.
Yes.
We talked about it before. So now we're about it. So would like to come in and be part of this. Let's talk about it. We're looking forward from you coming in and let's talk about it. I see Dr. Zelenka. Well, she's not an actual PhD doctor, but she is a community activist. Dr. Zelenka, meet Stanley Onye. Well, if I call you Dr. Zelenka, don't.
That's okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. That's okay. Quite a few people call me doctor since I ran for mayor for Baltimore, and I'm still on the ground doing the work. So right. I'm humbled.
You were able to hear some of Dr. Onye, Stanley Onye, his analysis and view on the impact, the effect on what happens to these children after they have lost more than a year and a half in school. And then we'll get into it. But you've been very busy on the streets, right where everybody is. You're not on Facebook. You're not on YouTube. You are literally hands-on the street with parents and parents with children. Were you able to
Absolutely.
some parents and the effect of being out of school on their children from the time that they get up? What happens?
It's been an amazing journey. It's been amazing going through a pandemic that we have never seen in our lifetime. You know, last pandemic was in 1917, 1918. It's over 102 years ago. Much has changed in a century, but children haven't changed. Parents still look to make sure that their children are going to be educated. And I got to tell you, both of you doctors, professors, I was listening to the professor there, and he is so right. I appreciated his analogy and his perspective, especially when it came to should we have shut down the country? Should we have closed the schools? Well, first things first, I think the former president took a real stand for the people of America, and listening to the advisors and to the science, did the right thing to shut it down. You know, whenever you're talking about looking at models in the scientific world, models are as close as accurate as the people that actually build and put in the information in the data. And I got to tell you that we lost over 600,000 people here in America.
Yeah.
It could have been 2.5 plus. So I appreciate taking that bold stance. But at the same time, I think that Congress, and I do feel that some of the federal government agencies and governors and even mayors should have kind of let that money follow the student. And I'm going to tell you why I'm saying that.
Yes.
Because through this pandemic, just listening to a lot of parents, and actually, I have over 600 clients. I've been in the financial industry for this year will be 40 years. And when I'm going to service my clients, I'm watching them struggle. I'm trying to make sure their children are on the internet, make sure they're logged into their e-learning, making sure that they can try to follow the teacher and follow the subjects and the information. And it's been a major struggle, especially when you talk about children that are kindergarten through elementary school. It's a struggle. First of all, their little attention spans are not mature enough to sit there for 4 to 6 hours. Okay, feel what I'm saying? So there's a lot of things involved. The second thing is the core curriculum these days in school can be beyond the ability for parents to be able to teach it or to assist in the curriculum. Because why? Parents haven't been brought up to date about the new textbooks, the new way of learning, and all of it. So you guys, I hope, is going to hear from a parent that went through that struggle over the past year through the pandemic and decided to pull their child out of public school. Because when Maryland started opening back up, you had other cities, other states opening back up for education. And instead, Baltimore City mayor has refused to open the schools. Now, grant you, there are some schools that they have begun to open called hybrid learning, where the student is there twice a week. Well, I'm not the parents are not understanding this, and the children aren't, a lot of them aren't understanding. Number one, those parents have had to stay home. Some of them have actually had to leave their jobs. Not that they got laid off their jobs, they literally had to leave their jobs because they had to make sure their children was learning. Some of them could not afford to pay a tutor to come in and work with their child. So it's a financial burden as well. So these are some of the struggles. You have some children that have become suicidal.
Yes.
I mean, this is serious. This is a serious impact on children. So you have to kind of, the officials have to, at this point, have to look at the cause and effect. Okay, do we continue to keep the children locked in their homes, or do we just spend the millions of dollars of stimulus money wisely and really, really hire the professionals to come in, prepare the schools? Because I'm looking at some of the schools and they aren't prepared, but yet they got millions of dollars from stimulus to do just that, prepare the schools so that children and teachers could re-enter.
There's three things that you mentioned. The money following students. When the schools sort of opened, students are partial school Monday, Tuesday, they close out on Wednesday, and then they back on Thursday and Friday. That's the partial school opening. Now, in the classrooms, from what I have observed, there are limited number of students actually in the classroom. 4 or 5 kids, where there used to be 20 kids. Now it's just about 4 and 5 kids. So I'm not sure how government says to teachers, and that's where that PTA comes in. When you were saying following the money, that PTA, I mean, it's called Parents Teachers Association. The problem is that a lot of parents, that's the second point that you were making, that a lot of parents have not learned to be teachers. Even in that, they went from their school to jobs to family, but teachers. So, you might want to weigh in on this, because how does parents who've never been teachers teach their children on mathematics, on science, those two very critical subjects? How do they do that?
One thing is certain. Pandemic has given us a new way of teaching, has given us a new perspective, in the sense that most things that people left behind are now being brought forth, in the sense that most of these things now, most softwares are being developed. Most methods are being tried.
Right.
One thing is very clear to me. We wanted to save lives, and I think limiting school attendance face to face somehow helped to curtail death rate of this virus. 500 plus thousand is too much. Imagine what could have happened if kids were allowed to go back to school and the teacher catches COVID and everybody in the classroom catches COVID, and the school also will suffer. So the best thing now was that, yes, we've agreed that this school closure was the right thing to do. That is given. Then the second thing now is that question that we should be asking is that a lot of money is out there trying to retrofit classrooms. Are those being used judiciously? Are classrooms now being fixed? Are rundown schools now being fixed so that they will comply to COVID specifications or something like that? If the answer is no, then that is where we should put our effort. How do we then make these classrooms conducive so that students will be able to go back safely, so that parents can go back to work? Parents have suffered. They have suffered and they will soon suffer some more, in the sense that some of them have lost income. How can they make up that income?
Well,
if they're not able to make up that income, that then has created another problem. So what we are going to watch is to
that's
look.
a question for the parent to know and those questions. And that is why this video broadcasting is called Let's Talk About It, because people just not talking it. For some odd reason, people are just hiding away, or I don't know what they're doing. You just, you look in the street, you don't see anybody. Where are the people? We've got to talk about it. So let's not waste any time. Either we have another guest on the line on the show, so to speak. Is your last name Adana Black?
Donna Black.
Adana Black. Good morning.
I'm sorry, my mic was muted. Good morning.
Oh,
Good morning. Hi, Zalika.
Hello,
Hi.
Adana.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Stanley. Good morning, Dr. Chuck. Or is it Mr. Chuck?
yeah, that's all right. Just call me Chief O.
Chivo.
Chief
Hi.
O.
Good morning, Chivo.
But a big zero. Oh.
Chief O. Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chief O.
Chuck,
Thank you for having me.
Did you get an synopsis or hear a little bit of the discussions that we have had?
I kind of heard the tail end. I apologize for my tardiness, but I did hear the tail end of it. And it was a lot about students and the schools, the school systems, children going back to the school building during COVID. I just wanted to, because you made a comment about the children being in school and making the classrooms conducive. This has been something we've been asking about before COVID, because the classrooms have always been overpopulated in Baltimore City. It's always been about 28 to 30 children in one classroom in Baltimore City. So the classrooms have always been overpopulated. So for them to open the schools back up during COVID, if they want to just say go back to regular schooling, the regular schooling would be overpopulated, because it's always been overpopulated. This is something that we have been complaining about for years. And in Baltimore City, public schools, the teachers being overwhelmed by having too many students to teach. So what ends up happening is children begin to slip through the cracks because they're not being taught properly. They're not getting a proper education. And then what happens is those children who slip through the cracks, they end up either putting them in special education, or they put them out of the school altogether, or they end up turning this to crime. So it really just depends on what schools are we talking about now, because they would have to revamp the whole school system to make the classrooms conducive.
Exactly. Well, Dr.
True.
Those lost can come back somehow, and I'm because I'm a young man.
You are.
Yes, you are.
But how do you regain that? How do you bring back what has been lost? Is that possible, Adana? You are in the school. What? How do you gain that back? Because I know one thing: the streets have swallowed a lot of these children. 14,
too many.
15, 16, 17-year-olds. They've been swallowed, absorbed by the street. And how do you get them out of the street, back in it, and restore that lost year of education? How do you do that? Anybody?
I would say firstly, take the responsibility off of the community, just the community. I think it's a team effort, because what's happening now is, I'm gonna say what's happened in the past, how the children got into the streets and being swallowed up into the streets is because they did not receive a proper education. You must educate the children. If you have a bunch of uneducated children running around, or children who have been turned off from learning, because that's what's happened in Baltimore City public schools, they have completely turned the children off from learning. They don't want to learn because they're not being taught properly, and the classrooms are boring. They're not teaching our children according to their mental and their academic capacity. So the children are bored. They're bored in school. They're bored with the way that the school system is being run. Excuse me, sir.
I want to
They're
weigh in on what
overpopulated.
you're. I want to weigh in on what you're saying, Adonna, and add to what you're saying.
Okay,
That's
okay.
that's definitely one side of it.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, and so because of that lack of teamwork, because they have not involved parents in a
Right.
lot of the process or the planning in the educational system, they have dropped the ball and completely left the parents out in some instances, and then they want the parents to jump in when they want the parents to jump in, not when the parents need to jump in.
Prepared or unprepared. Go ahead, Zelinka.
That definitely is one side of it, and I think we have to also look at how did we get here, which is something that Donna is bringing up prior to COVID. It's an opportunity where we can correct some mistakes that has been made in Baltimore City school system, and I think that made in a lot of your urban city schools, public schools. And one is, we have to look back at, a lot of people are talking right now about I call it systematic racism. And you guys have another that they're kind of turning out there in the public, another phrase for it. But you got to look at the system, and you have to look at the individuals that have been responsible for decades of running the system. And that being said, if you look at from the 70s, 80s, and 90s until the mid 90s, you had schools all across America, even in Baltimore City, that you had great teachers. You had teachers that really cared about teaching and teaching children how to learn, because there's an art to learning. They were very creative. Then you had the curriculum was such a curriculum where parents could actually assist their children with their homework. Okay. Curriculum has gotten more advanced. And a lot of that is due to technology, because they're able to add more information besides those textbooks, what is so-called written. Okay. They can add information as new information comes out in real time. Okay. So that's another issue. Another point is they took some of the main ingredients, the main curriculum that were requirements out of the school system. You used to have instrumental music. I came up where I played violin for 11 years, from first grade all the way through to Ellington. You had to play an instrument. From kindergarten, you had a music instructor that would come in, and each child would pick out an instrument, and you would learn that instrument. So already at a very young age, at 5 years old, you were introduced to that using the creative side of your brain. Okay. Art has always been in the classroom. Well, some administrators back in at the late 80s, mid 90s decided, oh, we're going to cut up the budget this way. And let me just say, this wasn't a racism thing. This was individuals that were running the system that looked at what they felt, no input from the parents. And back then the PTA was big time, but there was no input from the parents. It was all about the city council people, the mayors, as well as for those cities that actually oversaw the Board of Education. Right. It was about the people that sat on the Board of Education saying, oh, well, we need to cut such millions of dollars out of the budget. Let's cut out art. Let's cut out instrumental music. Let's cut out the Glee Club. Then they got so bodacious in their power where they even cut out civics. They cut out political science. We had government. And when I was in the 7th grade, I was a straight A student in government. When my children were going through public school, yes, public school, we had
But
great teachers.
but
So
excuse
we
me, can I
cut
chime in
out,
for a second?
in the second, we cut out
Because they only
even
cut it out of
the
certain schools,
PTA.
not all of them. Not all the schools,
There's
just
no
certain
PT,
ones.
yeah, but
Again,
there's no PTA in Baltimore City. There's no Parent Teachers Association in Baltimore City. When I was on the meeting with the spring break budget on the Board of Elections, just day before yesterday, I didn't hear anyone mention one of the most important key elements in our public education. No one mentioned parents. No one. They talked about 3 different fundings that were coming into the Baltimore City School. The
mhm,
Kerman funding, the stimulus
yeah,
funding,
yeah,
okay, and their regular budget, their annual fiscal year budget. But
yeah.
in the process of that, I only heard one young woman speak up that was one of the commissioners from one of the districts.
Oh,
And she ended up saying, we have Miss Bazemore, I love that you put your comments in the comment line. And that's why I was speaking about we need to be looking at you guys breaking down that budget so we can see the line items
thank you so
of
much.
how that money is being spent.
Thank you so much, Zelenka. Dr. Onye, you know I need you to come on in this on and say something because of your position. But let me just remind people that are watching. This show is called Let's Talk About It. Kind of like it, you know. Do you like the show? I mean, do you like the title? Let's talk about it. What do you say, Sister Black? Huh? Let's talk about it. Because it's not just talking, we're also coming up with solutions. So anybody who is out there on YouTube and all the Facebook, you want to chime in, go ahead and push something up, link that has been put for you to be able to chime in and come on in. Dr. Onye, let me come right back. Sister Adana, go ahead and say what you had in mind.
Well, I was just gonna piggyback off what Ms. Alika was saying, because it was only some schools that they cut these programs out of, and they were mainly the schools that were mainly populated by African American children. So the truth be told, the systematic setup was created to affect African American children specifically, because through the arts, music, through the arts, music, and the other programs that they cut out of school, it affected those children who were not maybe strong in the academic portions of mathematics and science and things like that. So it was creating opportunities for them to have scholarships to college through the arts, you know. And so what happened is they wanted to cut those opportunities out as well. So they cut the arts out of the school. They took the arts out of the school. So now even the children who weren't strong in academics, that were strong in the arts, they killed those opportunities for them to have a pipeline to college, a pipeline to higher education, things like that. And so a lot of times they were targeting even the young boys, African American boys. Up until the 3rd grade, the teachers would teach them as though they were special education students, even though they were not special education students. And what they would do is, if they had behavioral problems, they would put the boys in special education versus trying to find ways to fix the behavioral issues that the boys were having. A lot of times it's because they were extra smart and extra intelligent, and they were not being taught on their academic levels, so they were bored in the classrooms, because if the truth be told, they were teaching outdated curriculum. They were teaching curriculum that was below the grade level. If you're in 3rd grade, you should not be being taught 1st grade and 2nd grade curriculum. So this is what was happening in the Baltimore public. It's what is happening and what has been happening in the Baltimore City public school system that has systematically, like Ms. Dalika said, systematically set the children up for failure. So when you have boys, young men, African American boys who are not learning, who are not being stimulated in their brains academically, they will get bored and they will turn to other things. And then when they turn to other things, instead of them finding help for these young boys, they put them in special programs. And those special programs were nothing but pipelines to the juvenile detention center.
Adonna,
You know what? Wow, Adonna, you know what? I want to share this. I don't want to talk over you, doctor. But Adonna, you just struck something in me because my daughter went through that. Wow.
Ms. Dalika, 1 second. Hear from Dr. Stanley Onye. Onye, you can hear the litany of
Melissa went through that.
You can hear the litany of issues that are taking place predominantly in urban. There's so much.
Too much.
Of government, because the term they, we really like to, people need to know who they are. That's the failure of government. And of course the non-involvement of parents in the school system. And I'm sure that you have heard Adonna and Zelinka and what they have said. What say you? Because we need to somehow be able to handle this somehow, because this matter is not going to stop this weekend. We're going to talk about it again next Thursday with different people. But what do you say about that, Dr.
The first thing we have to do, and what I've heard from them, is that we achieve success when parents get involved. When parents are not involved, nothing happens. The second thing I have to say is that not all the children, we are not all cut out to go to college. Let me put it that way. Some of us are good in dribbling the ball and making the millions. Some of us are good in playing piano and becoming a legend and making the money. Some of us are good at different things. Some of us are good at being doctors, nurses, lawyers. We are not all cut out to do the same thing. So the best thing for the school system to do now is to find ways of meeting the needs of students that have different aspirations.
Right.
When you address a kid that says, listen, I just want to be an electrician. When you start telling that kid to learn about algebra or to learn about some other thing, that kid will be bored. But when you start talking about the issue of electricity, and then you get the kid alive. So one thing the school system has to do now is to make sure that there are resources available to accommodate the different reading, comprehensive, and everything level of kids. We are not all cut out to do the same thing at the same level. So one thing I can tell now from what is going on is that the kids staying home and watching their kids, or the parents staying home and watching their kids, have given them maybe new orientation of how to approach schooling and their kids' education. Teachers cannot do it all. However, the good news with this pandemic now is that kids can go back to do what they did not used to do in the past, to go back and look at the teacher's lesson that they missed, or the teacher's lesson that they did not understand. They can open up their computers now, or their whatever thing they are using, to go over that. And that, to me, is an innovation that was not there before pandemic. Teachers will teach, you either get it, you pass or fail. But right now, yes, you might fail it, but you go back, this is what the teacher said, this is what the teacher said, this. So we can monitor what is being taught in the classroom. We can also monitor how kids react in the classroom to different subjects, to different teachers. You have bad teachers, you have bad education. So the best thing now is for us to make sure that we have qualified teachers in the classroom, and specifically to reduce class size. I don't think a teacher will do a good job to students when that teacher is managing 30, 40 students in one classroom. That is a sign for failure. So whatever resources the schools have to put in, they have to put it in to reduce the class size, substantially reduce class size. It happens across the board. It happens in Baltimore County. It happens in Prince George's County, Montgomery County. Teachers are burnt out. So when you have a teacher that you are paying $65,000 a year, handling 30 or 40 students, that is a disaster. So that is really where I am going with that. Bring money to improve curriculum, bring money to hire good teachers, bring money to retrofit classrooms where students can feel at home. Some classrooms look like jailhouses. When you get in there, there is no incentive to even sit down there and study. So one thing we have to do right now is to make sure that we use the resources available to now make sure that the education system meets the standard.
Thank you
That's really what I would say.
Thank you so much. I'd like to calm everybody down now because time is only about 4 minutes left. And I want everybody to know that are listening, this is Let's Talk About It. And I'm going to ask you four people, good folks, to please put it on your schedule. We're going to talk about this issue again because reclaiming the school system is the key component of next Thursday, 8 o'clock, Madam Black. Reclaiming the school system. That's what the next topic is going to be next Thursday at 8 o'clock. So there's so much. And there's also some other professors from Morgan State that have indicated that they would like to come on board. So we'll extend that invitation. So as far as the screen can take people, I appreciate all of you coming on board. I appreciate the talk that we just had. I appreciate the subject matter that you covered. It is all very critical to reclaiming the school system, and particularly, I know it happens everywhere, but in particularly in urban cities, because for some reason that seems to be the one that is so mostly affected. Catholic schools, many of them are still open, but there's anything about that. But if you move around the state, you can see them going back and forth, wearing a mask, playing in the yards, going back into classroom. They're open. Now, let me not make this a race issue, but let's do make it a race issue. Jewish schools are open. But the African-American schools is under the control of somebody else. So somehow, the need to talk about reclaiming the educational system in urban cities is very critical.
Absolutely.
All of you, I think you are bright and ready to go forward. And I hope that everybody can come back. Dr. Onye, can I depend on you to come back?
I will come back.
The link
education.
Come back.
Absolutely.
Baby Black, I love your name. Donna Black. I love it. Can you come back next Thursday?
I will, and I'll be on time next time.
This is Let's Talk About It. It's not need back anymore and don't say it. Just leave things just being move around you. And it's not all the media that is in favor of talking about this. This is not a subject that is of interest to them, but it is a subject of interest to the parents of urban cities, the children of urban cities, and to the family, their uncle, their auntie, grandma. This is a critical subject. The education,
absolutely,
not just, Baltimore school system in crisis. We already know that. Now
They already know that
We
too.
have we have solutions, and they
Yes, we
just have
do.
to spend the money right so we can move forward with the solutions. We already
Right.
have the solutions.
That's
We know
right.
exactly what to do with our children.
Absolutely.
we're going to talk
Absolutely.
Let me conclude by making one statement. One of the fears that I have, the fear that I have right now is that this pandemic is going to take a very long time for the African American community to recover from this.
Wow.
We are already at a disadvantage anyway, and then this has happened. One thing is that we have to watch our students very carefully, because many families, because of this pandemic, may be facing very great food insecurity. There will be food insecurity because of loss of family income, as you know, because people are worried about
And
their family
housing insecurity.
members that have died as a
Mhm.
result of COVID. And the fear of catching COVID and everything else. Our students might be going through this, and they might be acting up. So
Mhm.
whatever resource that is available there, we have to make it available so that we monitor these kids as they come back to school. I'm afraid there might be more fighting in school now. There might be more truancy in school. There might be more disruption. Again, it's
Yeah.
good to look at it and make sure that we provide
But we
adequate
get to
help.
the root of the issue, the root of it.
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
Shooting
yeah,
is
as
not
you
the
can see,
answer.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. Thank you so much,
God,
Dr. Onye
see you.
and
Thank
This
you,
is
Onye, and
Chief
thank
O.
you,
Thank you.
Mr. Linton.
Dr.
thank
O,
you very
Chief O.
Chief O.
Chiefo.
31. And I'm saying thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll see you next Thursday. This is Chief O on Let's Talk About It. God bless all of you. God bless
Thank
all
you.
of
Peace and
you.
Bless
blessings.
you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
we're done.